Jim Stengel here at Sport Beach in Cannes at the festival, day one of the Festival of Creativity. I'm here with Mark Penn, Chairman and CEO of Stagwell Group. I'm usually doing a podcast, so this one is a little bit different. I'm on audio and video, but I'm delighted to be here, delighted to host Mark. I want to start with, Mark, you have this Sport Beach here in Cannes where people are outside playing basketball and pickleball and boxing and that sort of thing. Most of the companies here, your competitive set, have sort of the same format, right? They have a beach, they have some cocktails, they have some snacks, and discussions. This is sort of disruptive. It's a different model, and everyone's talking about it. I've only been here a day, but everyone's talking about, can you get into Sport Beach, and who's coming to Sport Beach? So I'm just going to ask you, is your thinking behind this a bit of a metaphor for the Stagwell Group?
Oh, absolutely. I like to say that we're a shoemaker with shoes, meaning that you notice it's Sport Beach, hosted by Stagwell. It doesn't say, oh, Stagwell, and then a little type Sport Beach. Because the concept was, wow, we're trying to be the transforming marketing company. So how can we take Cannes, do something interesting, disruptive, but not crazy, right? Something that really ties into what a lot of people are enjoying and thinking about, and it's an important topic within marketing. Sports and marketing today is one of the big three or four topics.
Yeah, it's everything. So we're in the day one of Cannes. You're here until Thursday. How many years have you been coming to this festival?
Well, on and off, so through the various years. Came a couple of times with WPP, came a few times with when I was at Microsoft. 3 years ago, I always joked that I was here and I sat in my hotel room. Then like 2 years I came, I had mostly meetings, and now I think we're doing Sport Beach, and I think we're establishing Stagwell, out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree with that. What's your agenda like for the week? I mean, are you doing a lot of meetings? You hanging out? Give us an idea, a little window into your agenda.
Yeah, no, I think it's panels. Usually everybody wants to talk about AI.
Yep.
And just interviewing clients, prospective partnerships, an emphasis on meetings. This is kind of the Davos of marketing, right?
For sure.
Of course, the good thing what you said is when you're at Davos, you always say, oh, somebody's at a better thing than I. And it's a good thing that people say, oh, I really want to get to Sport Beach. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah, there's big FOMO on Sport Beach this year. It's the theme. It'll be the topic in Ad Age, right? So, so tell me a little bit more about what you're looking forward to this week. Is there a panel? Is there a meeting? Is there a person? Is there something that you're really, really looking forward to?
No, I mean, I enjoyed today. I think I had 2 or 3 CEOs that I met with. I had a nice interview. Some clients, some prospects, some large companies now looking at us for the kinds of partnerships, particularly I think in the digital transformation area, where we're so strong. I think I'm here really to enjoy. Tomorrow I'll be doing some pickleball. Right, we want to make sure my old motto: you never got injured actually doing marketing, but this could break that exception.
So, are you a sporty guy?
No,
no golf, no tennis, no.
No,
squash?
I like tennis.
Yeah.
I like sports, but in the theme of things, I always tell people if it's about sports and alcohol, probably I'm not the number one person. If it's about technology and food, probably I have the great depth. And, part of Sport Beach, frankly, it wasn't my idea, right? So a lot of this company, the vision that there could be a new competitor that was digital first and for the modern, it was my idea. But this wasn't, right? And what I liked about it actually was that it came up from a creative company into kind of a group of people who looked at it and said they're going to execute it. And it's just a really good example of how nimble they could be and really create something that didn't exist before.
I'd like to take you there for a bit. I think, the history of Stagwell, you started it, 8 years ago? You became CEO of MDC in 2019. Then you merged about a year later, and then you changed the name about a year later to Stagwell. You've got significant revenue now, decent, and you've got some scale.
$2.5 billion.
Yeah. So you're a player. I'd like you to talk a little bit about being a CEO of this company, because I've talked to some of your people, and the way you lead, choices you made, how you see the role of a CEO, I think is different from a lot of your competitive set. So I'd like you to talk a bit about what you work on, some of the choices you've made on this journey that have created a culture which I think people are truly incentivized to collaborate versus talking about collaboration, they're doing it. So I'd love you to go there a bit with us and talk about being the CEO.
Sure. I mean, I think my perspective was I tried to learn a little bit from the great people that I worked with. I got to work with presidents. I got to work with, Steve Ballmer, Satya Nadella. I got to work with Martin Sorrell.
Yeah.
And each one I kind of learned a little bit what to do, what not to do. And it really is interesting because really I started this thing at about age 60. Right, and said, how can I best use the skills that I've learned? And part of what, when I was at WPP, I originally came in as a founder of a smaller company.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, I want some experience managing larger assets. And at a certain point I said, it's really interesting. I was at Microsoft and we gave a big piece of business to one of the holding companies, and I just making chit chat. And I turned to the CEO of that company. I said, what do you think of the Microsoft brand? And he said, how should I know? I was a lawyer. So I realized, what other industry is it where the people at the top of the industry didn't actually do it? So I've been doing it for all those years, right on the ground. So I kind of took a philosophy. Look, I wanted really exciting, intelligent, creative people, smart people, that I was bringing those up and along. Second, that you had to have a collaborative atmosphere, right? And third, we had to really kind of live that in the way we do things. I think the first 3 or 4 years, 5 of us sat in a conference room every day and we made every decision collectively. And even now, I insist upon collective meetings where everybody talks about what everybody's doing, both in what I've created the senior leadership team, which is the various corporate functions like legal and marketing, and the business leaders who run all the major businesses, because I didn't think that in the other holding companies, the people that run the businesses had relationships. And if they don't have relationships, they're not going to trust each other. They're not going to work together. And so, every 2 weeks, we used to do it in person. We get together in Zoom, because when I was at Microsoft, senior leadership team would get together every Friday for most of the day. And I really felt, okay, collaboration, have a vision for scale, set up the organization properly, create incentives for what we call earn in instead of earn outs, right? So that people were in fact earning their way into being more and more involved with the company rather than figuring out how they were going to leave.
Say more about that.
Yeah, because I had to say, well, okay, what am I going to do with founders who were on our way out, and a whole system that was geared? And I was a founder too who went through an earn out and say, okay, I'm going to take a little bit more from the Microsoft model, right? I'm going to be much more stock oriented. I'm going to buy people into the concept of a larger group, that there's something about themselves, there's something about their company, there's something about a group of companies, because I put a lot of the companies into groups, and the whole, and that we should have incentives that align them across all of those elements, right? And that's how we're going to have retention and growth past earnouts, and get people really invested and excited about what we could do.
Yeah. You've had quite a growth curve. A lot of things are going well. Is there anything that is challenging you right now that you'd like to make better progress on?
Well, I wish the government wasn't trying to slow the economy down.
Yeah.
This is not helpful
No.
for business and a service business and a marketing business. And I hope we're at the end of that. I think the tech companies.
Do you think we are?
I think we're closer to the end than the beginning. I think the tech companies went through their slimming down, and I think now they realize, particularly with generative AI, that they've got to get back into the biz. In fact, I think there's going to be more competition between and among tech companies than we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, we're at a big theme besides Sport Beach this year is AI, right? And AI is on the stage almost every of their presentation. What's your perspective on how that's going to change this industry and your company?
Well, first of all, I do think it's big. I don't think it's just a flash in the pan. I always tell people, hey, where's your driverless car? So don't overdo it, don't overrate it. We're looking at, from our digital transformation businesses, how can we help companies answer the question, how do they incorporate AI into what they're doing? B, we're looking at how we incorporate AI into marketing processes, like research. We already have, we've already redone the open-ended process, and now we're looking at focus group analysis, and then we're looking at storyboard creation. So we look for those areas where you can use it to shorten development time. And third, we're also developing a series of tech products, right, which is unique in the industry. And so we already have a generative AI product out there called Profit, prprofit.com, if you want to take a look at it, play with it, that basically writes a news release for you, sees who's likely to cover it, who's likely to cover it favorably, and does the pitch for you in different tones. And so generally, when I was running Burson Marsteller, I would have deployed it like instantly.
Yeah. Well, you got your start in polling, right? And I think you were polling in grade school, middle school, before you were shaving with a Gillette razor. I think you were polling.
My first poll, yeah.
And you've kept that, and that's what you built your first business on, right? You got into politics and then business. Speak about that mindset. What was it about you as a kid that made you so curious about? I just watched the Fabelmans, the Spielberg film, about him getting involved in making films, right? And it took, most of it's about his childhood and his curiosity as a kid. So what drew you to that back when you were 12, 13 years old?
Yeah, it's interesting. It really is traced to, I was watching a CBS program on race relations, and they had a poll. And I was intrigued, just this notion you could find out what people are thinking, as I always joke, without actually talking to them, but through this process. And so I took their poll, did my middle school and high school faculty of the same poll, and compared the two, right?
Pretty good.
And said, and in fact, the teacher many years later sent me back the rexograph or mimeograph of my first poll, because I had sent the results out to the school. And I thought this was really
Were they controversial results?
They were not as controversial as the poll that I later did when I was editor of the paper in school, and I polled all the kids on how much sex and drugs they had, and I published that, and that tended to be a little more controversial.
I love it. Transparency, radical transparency.
Well, I was about disrupting, and then I had, I went to Harvard, and they used to keep all the housing choices secret. So I just showed up at the dining halls, did a poll, and published the dining choices, the house choices, and broke their whole system, right? Because there was a way of getting information through polling. But I always try to explain to people that real polling is not about 20% think this and 30% think that, right? That's a lesser level. Real polling is being a little bit more like a detective and having a model of how people are thinking that you abstract from the limited number of questions you get to ask in a poll. That is the highest level or form of polling.
Yeah. So how does that mindset that you developed a long time ago and refined, how does it affect how you lead now?
I like to, I always used to say numbers plus creativity equals strategy, right? And so that was always my theme. My theme was I had trouble with agencies that were trying to sell you the creative idea that the last company didn't buy, right? And they just thought it was a great idea. And I felt that creativity tailored to a situation, which is really what we did in politics, right, is really home run creative. And so it always kind of tempered me, because people would think, oh, this guy just wants to test everything and take our heart and soul out, and no, that was never the truth. I wanted to stimulate your brain to really solve the problem through creativity. And that kind of problem solving, AI is not going to be able to do that. It takes really advanced people.
Yeah. You got into copywriting at some point, didn't you? Didn't your polling lead you into writing and doing ads?
Yes.
This is going back into your career. Do you still enjoy that part of the business?
They don't let me do it anymore.
Right.
They don't let me do it. But yeah, I wrote a number of the 3 a.m. ad, and because I went from testing messages to writing messages. I explained I was never very good at the visuals, but I was really good at the words. And even at Microsoft, I did a lot of the writing of all the ads, to the consternation of the agency. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed, as I go back to being a CEO. When I talk to people who run I said, they know that I've made ads. I know what it is to go through and respect the creative process, and to do what I was good at, which was framing the message, and not try to do what others could do a lot better, which was putting the visuals to that.
Yeah. So listen, last question. I read a thought piece you did in Barron's, I don't know, just a couple days ago, I believe. And it really was about how to think about your brand, your organization in these polarized social and political times. And obviously, we're all getting asked those questions in the situation, and the Bud Light thing is being talked about in practically every meeting here in Cannes. You wrote a thought piece on that I thought was the most thoughtful, actionable, and coherent thought piece I read on the issue. So I wonder if in our brief time we have left, if you could just help our listeners with your thinking on that issue, because I think it would help a lot of companies if they adopted it.
Sure. I mean, I tried to think about so what's going on, right? And what I came to is that every person has a political brain, and that's the part of their brain that they analyze politics and they use for voting. And they have a commercial side, which is kind of what products they like and what they enjoy. And normally those two brains operate in different and individual spheres. And what happens here is when there's a crossover, and suddenly the political brain takes over, and people are voting when they're buying, as opposed to just buying and liking, right? And that's when companies get into this zone, and now look, it's genuinely a 50-50 country. So my advice on this is, what is it that you're really trying to do? You're trying to get people to go back and put their political brain into voting and disassociate you from politics. And we have some very interesting research kind of coming out on that pretty soon. But second, it also means that, to the extent that, we had a system at the White House, right, where every word mattered at the White House. Like millions of people would pore over every word. We knew how to have a review process it had to be done in a couple of hours, but it had to go policy desk, press desk, congressional desk, right? And companies have to understand, Democrats, Republicans, policy, investor, they have to have more of a system like we had at the White House, and they have to have more of an operation, and we've set up what we call the Risk and Reputation Unit, which will have Democrats and Republicans, so that the people look at it from both sides, and then understand when you're making conscious decisions with your brand to wade into politics, not getting in an unconscious decision by mistake where then you can't dig yourself out, and figure out how to be socially responsible, without getting caught in politics in a way that, look, we're heading into a really divisive presidential campaign. And I don't think you as a brand want to be, right in the middle of that if you're in every person's product. If you want to be a product for half the country, then... And
there are some brands like that, right?
And there are successful brands like that. We look at that, if there's a Patagonia or something like that that's made a decision, and that definitely works for them. And I think Nike, at the end of the day, did a good and successful job. But it was a slightly less polarized time than it is now. Now I think you've got Democrats and Republicans who are going to watch companies like a hawk and how they win through this thing, and sometimes make tough decisions. Sometimes the right decision is a tougher decision. And but my main advice is, if you don't have a bipartisan team at your side, politics is hard enough for politicians, let alone someone who's in a commercial business.
That's a good way to end it. Mark, thank you. Thank you very much, and have a great week.
Thank you.